So we want to welcome Rabbi Shore, who is an acclaimed filmmaker, author, and human rights advocate, whose work has empowered Jewish identity and exposed the escalating dangers of antisemitism. As the founder of Open Door Media and the Clarion Project, he's become a steady and influential voice in an increasingly hostile media landscape. Through these platforms, he has built and led initiatives dedicated to strengthening Jewish identity, defending democratic values, and confronting extremist ideologies. His documentaries and feature films have reached audiences in the hundreds of millions worldwide, earned multiple awards, and helped shape public understanding of radical Islam, anti-Semitism, and the State of Israel. Across decades of media work, Rabbi Shore has combined investigative storytelling with moral clarity, bringing complex geopolitical and ideological challenges into mainstream public discourse. Rabbi Shore's latest projects, a new book and a new film, converge around a single urgent question: why the Jews? Through film, writing, and public advocacy, Rabbi Shore continues to address one of the most enduring and urgent questions of our time: why does anti-Semitism persist, and what does the Jewish story demand of us in response? Rabbi Shore, welcome. Please feel free to unmute, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you for coming. You're muted right now.
Unmute. Okay. Thank you very much for having me as your guest, and thanks everybody for joining. I'm here speaking to you from Jerusalem, from the Holy Land. I grew up originally in Canada, London, Ontario, small town in Canada. And I've been on a journey, but I moved to Israel 40 years ago after graduating from University of Toronto. And I studied at the university anti-Semitism. And that study, I came on to some fascinating ideas that were really different from conventional wisdom, very different from the way we were taught to understand anti-Semitism. And it was so different that it took me 40 years to write a book, because I felt that the Jewish world was not ready to hear the ideas. It was, I don't know, too close to the Holocaust. The conventional wisdom was too strong, and these ideas were against conventional wisdom. And so 5 years ago or so, I decided, okay, now's the time. Now's the time. We got to do it. That was actually before October 7th, before we all got this, our generation's wake-up call. And then the book actually came out 1 year after October 7th. And this is the book. It's called Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Subtitle: Learning to Love the Lessons of Jew Hatred. It became an Amazon bestseller quickly. I have some nice approbations from Alan Dershowitz and Dennis Prager and Gil Troy and Ambassador Friedman, Rabbi Heyer from the Simon Wiesenthal Center, Rabbi Joseph Telushkin. So a lot of people like the book, and I'm very happy with how it's gone. I've been going on tour. I made a film about it because, principally, as Ilana said, I'm a filmmaker. I'm an educator. I've been in Jewish education for my whole life. Ever since, at age 20, I became what's called a Baal Tshuva. Do you all know what a Baal Tshuva is? Yes. Good, good. So when I became a Baal Tshuva, which means I didn't grow up religious and I became religious at age 20, if I had asked everybody what's a Baal Tshuva in the early 80s, nobody would have known, because it was a new phenomena. And thank God it's become more widespread. And I've been part of that movement of kind of, trying to help young Jews understand what Judaism's all about. And so I've spent my life in the area of Jewish education, as Barry and Carol know. And about 20 years ago, I started to make documentary films in the service of educating people. I've made 18 feature-length documentary films. They've been seen by 150 million people or so. About half of them dealt with the threat of radical Islam and national security threats. About half of them positive messages about Israel and the Jewish people and Judaism. And then I founded an organization called Open Door Media, which is the Jewish world's #1 media content education organization. We have a big YouTube channel under Unpacked, etc. So I was really a filmmaker, and this book is the first book that I've written. And then I made my 18th film, which was based on the book. And the film's called Tragic Awakening. Hopefully in the next month or so, it'll be available on Apple Films and Amazon Prime and other things as well. So that's all by way of introduction. So what I'm going to share with you today is the real reason for anti-Semitism. Really. So that's a big thing, right? That's wow, why have the Jewish people been hated for all of these years? Why do people want to destroy us? Why is Hamas so obsessed with us? Why were the Nazis so obsessed that they wanted to destroy us? What is it about us? Why did the world respond so bizarrely after October 7th? Why was there a campus movement pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas against Israel? How can the liberal community on campuses be against the liberal democracy of Israel that honors democratic principles and human rights and women's rights and gay rights, and they're standing against us in support of radical Islamist dictatorships that are cruel and murderous and genocidal and would kill the gays? How is it? How is it? How do we make sense of this world that we're living in? What is going on here? And the thing is that the Jewish world, we, the Jewish people, we've done ourselves a tremendous disservice in so many ways, but one way is because we accept it. We've learned to accept it. And what does that mean? What do I mean when I say we've learned to accept it? We've learned to say it's a disease. Anti-Semitism is a disease. So that's the way it is. It's a disease. But I would suggest to you that is really cutting it short. Like that's doing a tremendous disservice because we're not exploring what it's all about. Now, if you go to a doctor, if someone has a bunch of symptoms, is not feeling well, your beloved one has symptoms, he's not feeling well, and he goes to the doctor, and the doctor is only treating the symptoms, but is not getting to the root cause of the disease. So okay, so you're dealing with symptoms, but the root cause, it comes back, it keeps coming back because you're not getting the root cause. So that's the parallel here. When we say it's a disease and accept it and end our research, we end our inquiry. We don't go further to say, well, what's the cause of the disease? What's the nature? Where is this coming from? Is this viral? Is it bacterial? Is it muscular? Is it anti-immune? What is going on? Let's go further. And we've stopped looking into it. And I think there's deep psychology. We might come back around to it by the time we get to the end of what I'm going to share with you today. I think it's all related to the real reason for anti-Semitism. But I first want to point that out, that we don't go into it. We stop looking into it. We don't think there's an answer. And I'm going to share with you what I think is the answer. Before I do, when I say to you, why the Jews? Those three words, the question, why the Jews? What does that question mean to you? Now, since you're all on mute, you can't answer it, but I'll tell you what usually people say. Why the Jews is what's the reason that the Jews have been hated for so long? Why the Jews? Why anti-Semitism is so consistent and persistent and intense over all the generations? Why the Jews? What is it about the Jews that they're always hated? What is it about anti-Semitism? There's another way you can understand why the Jews, and that is why the Jews. What's the why of the Jews? What's the why of the Jewish people? What's the purpose of the Jewish people? Why are we here? Who are we, the Jewish people? And what is our mission? What is our purpose? Why the Jews? Now, that question is looked at even less than why is there anti-Semitism? And I'm going to suggest to you, and this is what you're going to hear from me in the next half hour, is that the answer is the same. The answer to the two questions, the two meanings of why the Jews is one and the same. Why the Jews have been hated, if we get to the real reason, you will see that it is also the explanation for what is the nature and what is the purpose and mission of the Jewish people. Now, the source for what I'm going to share with you of the real reason for Jew hatred, I get from two places. And these two places have the same explanation. Source number one for the real reason of anti-Semitism is the greatest anti-Semite in human history, Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler explains to us in very clear terms why he hates the Jews. And I'm going to share that with you. The second source is the Torah. The Torah, not surprisingly, asks the question why Jews are hated and answers it in very clear terms. Now, what's amazing is that you would think that if Adolf Hitler had a clear explanation of why he hated the Jews, that you would all know it. Correct? You would think if he was very clear on it, then we would all know what Hitler's explanation of why the Jews. And you would think also that if the Torah has a clear explanation of why Jews are hated, that you would have known that. This is the Jewish explanation for why Jews have been hated throughout history. You would think that you would know that as well. So why is it that only now, at the ripe old age of 50, are we hearing these ideas very often for the first time? It's remarkable. It's remarkable. It's not a cover-up, because you're going to see that these ideas are out there. It's not a cover-up. It's psychological. It's like denial. It's not wanting to know the answer. It's something deep, deep psychology that has blocked the answers from being seen, from being revealed, because they're very obvious. So when I'm going to tell you, first of all, Adolf Hitler's explanation, which I think explains not only his own obsession with the Jews and desire to commit Jewish genocide, but all anti-Semites. I think he explains it for all anti-Semites. And then, and after we're done, I'll come back to Torah. But what have we been taught? I told you at the beginning, I'm going to be challenging conventional wisdom. What is the conventional wisdom about why there was a Holocaust? Elon, you want to tell me conventional wisdom? You can go off mute and you can control yourself and tell me what's No, you don't want
It's all
to.
you.
Okay.
No, go for it.
All me. Okay. Here's conventional wisdom, and you'll tell me it'll ring true as I explain it to you. Conventional wisdom is along these lines. World War I was a disaster for Germany. The Versailles Treaty that was done by the Allied nations punished the German nation. The German nation went into a spiral of economic collapse. Their self-image was destroyed. They were an absolute mess. And in that psychological and physical and spiritual mess and confusion of the 1930s, up came a man who was a great speaker, a great orator. And he said, German people, we're great. And he inspired the German nation to once again have self-esteem. And he said, we need and he in his mind, because he was a great speaker and great psychological, he said, we need a scapegoat. We need to blame all the problems on somebody because we have so many problems. It's the Jews. The Jews are the scapegoat, and we, German nation, were great. And because he was such a great speaker, he was able to whip up the masses, and they came to his support, and the Holocaust happened. Am I right? This is how we've all been taught. An entire 3 generations of the Holocaust, since the Holocaust, have basically been taught variations on that. Now, even before we get into what he really said, consider how patently counterintuitive that explanation is. If you were a Western person, if you were an American or a European in the 1920s and 1930s, and you wanted to get the best education in the world, where did you want to go to university? Harvard, Yale, or Germany? And the answer is Germany. The top universities in the planet, the top scientists in the planet, the top philosophers in the planet, the top artists in the planet, they were German. Germany was the most sophisticated country in the 1930s, and they were intellectuals, etc. The idea that this incredibly sophisticated intellectual civilization could just become completely brainwashed, whipped up into mass frenzy by a man with zero coherent ideas, just because it was an emotional frenzy and a scapegoat that made no sense. Makes no sense. And yet, we've all been taught it, and we've all bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. And we bought it. What's remarkable about it is that it's not what Hitler said. It's not what Hitler said. I don't know who came up with these ideas, but it's not what Hitler said. You can imagine Hitler did a lot of speeches. He wrote Mein Kampf. He had lots of conversations as the head of state for over a decade. He had a lot of officially recorded conversations and private meetings. Everything was written down. Did he write down, hey guys, we need a scapegoat and let's get the Jews and I'm going to whip up the masses with my great oratory skills? No. Actually, this is what Hitler said. Hitler said, I'm going to commit the destruction of the Jewish people because the Jewish people are my ideological foes. Hitler said, I want to reset this planet on new ideologies, on a new ideology. And I need to destroy the Jewish people because they're my ideological enemy. They represent something that's polar opposite to what I need to do. Not only that, Hitler said, I'm saving the world from a very horrendous ideology that could destroy humanity. And the Jewish people are responsible for that horrible ideology that has come into the world. And I'm going to have to save humanity. I'm going to save the Western world. And in order to save the world, I need to wipe out that nation that is bringing in an ideology that is going to destroy humanity. Hitler looked at himself as a very good person who was saving humanity, not as an evil person who likes to do genocide for no reason. But he was, so the question is, what was this all about? In the, now I'll explain it to you a little bit more. In the 1930s, no, in 1941, Hitler had a very famous meeting in his office. The war was already going on. I have a picture of this meeting in my book somewhere. He had a meeting with someone who ended up being a guest, an honored guest of the Nazis throughout World War II. Does anybody know who that honored guest was who came to visit him in 1941? No, you can't tell me anyways.
Yeah, you
What?
feel free to unmute yourself if you want and just remute.
The Waqis of Jerusalem.
Grand Mufti, the Grand Mufti.
Very good, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. So many of us have heard about that meeting. What did he say? What did he say at that meeting? Hitler said, I have it right here, the exact quote in my book. Hitler said to the Mufti in 1941, it was, I'm going to tell you a secret, and I want you to take this secret and lock it in your heart. And the secret is that on the surface, I'm fighting England and Russia and the Allies, but that's not what the war is about. Ideologically, this war is a battle between National Socialism and the Jews. And everything else is illusion. And then he assured the Mufti, don't worry, once I finish destroying the Jews in Europe and taking over the world, I will come to the Middle East and do your request and wipe out the Jews of Israel as well. That's what the Mufti was requesting. The Mufti then went on to establish an SS battalion, division. But the question is, what did Hitler mean when he said that? And he said throughout, even his first speech, Hitler's first speech that was recorded in 1922, he said, there can be no compromise, only two possibilities, either victory of the Aryan or annihilation of the Aryan and the victory of the Jew. It was an either or battle. One of us is going to win. This is the real war. Jews against Germans, Jews against the Nazis. And so we hear these statements, and this is what conventional wisdom has done. And said, see, he's a paranoid, insane nut job. And we stop like that doctor who doesn't try to find the source of the disease. We stop there. But instead, we should go further and say, what does he mean? Why is he looking at it as the main battle of civilization is between the Germans and the Jews? And again, he explains it. I'm not telling you anything that's not a direct quote, and I go into it in great detail in the book. on his ideology, all in his words. So here's what it is, and this is the part where you need to concentrate really hard for a couple of minutes, because this is where it gets a little complex. So bear with me. I'll try to say it as sharply and quickly as possible. In the 1850s, there was the discovery of a new science that revolutionized how humanity looked at the natural world. And that was Darwin's discovery of survival of the fittest and selection, natural selection. What did that principle say? That principle says that in the animal kingdom, it's a fight for life. It's might makes right. And the strong will devour and conquer the weak. The weak will be brushed aside from history. The strong will survive. And that applies to species, where some species will just disappear because they didn't have the strength. And it also applies to within the species, where the weak specimens will not survive. The result of this process of natural selection is the evolution of the natural world in what one could say a positive sense, because the natural world, the animals become stronger. The stronger specimens survive, the stronger species survive, and the weak die off. So as a result, it's a positive natural process of the animal kingdom getting stronger and stronger. Soon after Darwin revealed this to the world, there was another movement that called itself social Darwinism. Now, those words, you can see where this is going. It means that society, humanity, social, adheres to the same rules. That the story of human history is also the story of evolution and natural selection. Instead of species, we have nations or races. The stronger nations survive. The weaker nations die off. The stronger human specimens in a race survives. The weaker ones die off. Is that good? Is that good? Is that bad? Neither. It's nature. It's nature. That's how it's supposed to work. It's the laws of nature. It's the laws of how the world works. And as a result, just like the animal kingdom evolves positively with strength and power, and the weak die off, so also with humanity. This became an incredibly popular ideology in the late 1800s and early 1900s. This was not something that the Germans themselves developed or that Adolf Hitler developed. This was extremely popular thinking. Now, it then became intertwined with anti-Semitism. At a certain point in the late 1800s, people who believed in social Darwinism very often became anti-Semitic. And in fact, those words, anti-Semitism, was coined in the 1870s by a German anti-Semite. It was a part of this overall view. Now, why? What's the connection between this discovery of the laws of natural selection and might makes right and the Jews? And the answer is that think for a moment, what ideologies, what values oppose the idea of natural selection? So let me ask you, in a might makes right world of natural selection and evolution through survival of the fittest, would a value like help the poor and help the weak and socialized medicine, socialized healthcare help be part of that value system? Do those values work together? No, those values don't work together. Those values collide. Because natural selection says, let the weak die. Now, just to jump ahead for a moment, do you know what the Germans did to their own mentally impaired population? They had a eugenics program. They had I think that's what it's called. They killed 75,000 of their own Germans because they had mental issues. Because that's what natural selection says to do with your weak and your poor and those who are not strong, because you want to strengthen the species. You want to strengthen the race, strengthen the nation so that it can have the power to conquer and destroy and survive in this dog-eat-dog world that is the natural law. Let's do another one. The idea that all humans have equal rights under the law. Does that fit in with it? The equality of humanity. All humanity is created equal. No, not all animals are equal. There's lions and there's tigers, and then there's the ones the lions and tigers eat for lunch. It's a hierarchy. It's not equal, horizontal. It's a vertical hierarchy of power. That's how the natural world looks and is supposed to be for the sake of the evolution of humanity. Now, Hitler looks around the world in the early 1900s, and he says he studied the world and he studied these issues. And he said, oh no, he said, oh my gosh, the world is in big trouble. Why is the world in big trouble? Because the world has taken upon itself a series of values and ideas and has bought into a series of ideas and values that are opposed to the values of natural selection and might makes right. The world has accepted these ideas. The Western world, his world, European civilization has accepted the ideas, the values of love your neighbor as yourself, peace on earth, not war and might and struggle, but peace on earth. Let's strive for that. The equality of man, the intrinsic value of all human life, ethical monotheism. He looked at the world and he said, oh my gosh, we're in trouble. Because if this value system takes hold, then the world is finished. Humanity is finished. Because what happens when the animal kingdom doesn't have natural selection? The animal kingdom crashes and burns. Because there's no vitality. It's like a zoo. When you go to a zoo and everything's taken care of, so there's no vitality and the animals are lethargic and pathetic, and you feel bad for them, right? That's what would happen to humanity if there's no more struggle and might makes right, etc. So Hitler sees, oh my gosh, over the past couple thousand years, Western civilization has bought into these horrible ideas of peace and love and equal rights and humanitarianism and God. And he looks around the world and he says, I got to fix it. For the sake of humanity, I got to fix this. And he knows that's going to be a very difficult job because humanity has accepted this other ideology. So he said, okay, how do I fix this? I got to figure out who's responsible for these horrible ideas. And he looks around and he says, who's responsible? Who's responsible for these horrible ideas that have infected humanity, that are going to cause the downfall of the human race, the human civilization? And he says there's three culprits. You thought I was just going to say one, but he says there's three. Anyone want to guess on the three? I'm pausing. Number one, Christianity. Number two, communism. Okay, they didn't bring God, they minus God. But the idea of a utopian world where all humanity is living in peace and brotherhood, yeah, it didn't work out that way. But that was the ideology, and it was very powerful and growing in the 1920s and 1930s, and even today. And number three, the Jews. And then he says, okay, what am I going to do to solve this problem? I have to destroy all three. So this is what Hitler means when he said behind Christianity, behind Russia, behind Britain, behind Russia, there's an ideology. It's communism, it's Christianity. Hitler was going to wipe out Christianity. He said it over and over and over. Religion and National Socialism cannot exist together. But he saw it dying a natural death, so he said, I don't have to take that on first. Christianity was losing its hold on European man, just as we see it today, losing its hold to a large degree, especially in Europe. So he wasn't worried too much about Christianity. He said he would destroy it after the war. Communism, he was very worried about. He started a war with Russia. He was going to kill every commissar, every officer, every educational officer was going to be killed. That was the orders. That was World War II. He was wiping out communism because it was a bad ideology. And number three, the Jews. He's going to wipe out the Jews, the originators of these horrible, terrible ideas of love and peace and universal rights and humanitarianism and God. But only one of the three did he say, I need to do genocide. You understand that? Isn't that interesting? Only one of them requires genocide. As I said, Christianity, he'll deal with it later. That's not a big deal. Communism, I'll destroy the leaders. He'll destroy the churches later. He doesn't have to destroy every Christian. He doesn't have to destroy every Russian. Only the ones who are, why not every rabbi and every synagogue? Fine. Why every Jew? And again, here's the breaking point. Here's the breaking point. Here's where conventional wisdom says the answer why you need to kill every Jew is because he's insane. He's obsessed. It's irrational. It's a disease. But again, that's not his explanation. That's not his answer. That's somebody who made it up and taught us all. I'm not saying it's one person. Hitler's answer was because it's in the Jewish racial genetics. He said, even if a Jew has not been to Hebrew school, even if he knows nothing about Judaism, even if he's totally assimilated, even if he doesn't believe in God, the Jew, by his natural spiritual genetics, his racial characteristics, he will bring these ideas of humanitarianism and love and peace and equal rights into the world. And therefore, the only solution to the Jewish problem, now we know what the Jewish problem is, the only solution to the Jewish problem, which is final, which he called rational, he called himself a rational anti-Semite, is genocide. If every Jew is gone, and then he gets rid of Christianity and Bolshevism, the world can be reset on these values of might makes right and natural selection, and let's fight wars every few years, and let's conquer the bad people and make slaves of the weak people. And that will be the world that develops and evolves just like the natural animal kingdom. Ultimately, therefore, Hitler was fighting an ideological war. And he articulated what was deep down bothering and why he became so popular, why it was so easy to get the entire German nation involved, because somehow deep down the Jewish people are pushing and making changes and bringing these ideas into the world, and we bother them. And Hitler was able to articulate the bother, and he was able to put his finger on it and said, I'm not going to be an emotional anti-Semite like the last 2,000 years of emotional anti-Semite. It's not good enough, pogroms and persecution and hatred. It's not good enough. We need a final solution because we are rational about the problem. The fight against the Jews is an ideological war of what humanity is about, what a human being is. Is he a soul in a body, or is he just part of the animal kingdom? This was the fundamental fight of humanitarianism, what they call the human concept, versus the honor concept, natural law. So now we'll get to the Torah. In the Talmud, it asks, why, we just had this last week's Torah portion, the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. The Talmud asks, why is the mountain upon which God gave the Torah to the Jewish people when we left Egypt, why is it called Mount Sinai? And it answers with a play on words. The Hebrew word for Mount Sinai is Har Sinai. Sinai. The Hebrew word for hatred is Sin'ah. So you have Sinai, the mountain, and Sin'ah, hatred. So the rabbis do a play on word. They said, why is it called Har Sinai? Because at Sinai, Sin'ah came into the world. When God gave the Jewish people the Torah, his morality manual of objective morality, the Ten Commandments, the nature of human life and what we're supposed to be doing in this world, and right and wrong, God tasked the Jewish people with the mission to bring those ideas of the Ten Commandments and morality into the world, to bring it to the whole world. And you know what the world thinks about that? The world reacts negatively. Because some people are good, and they're like, yeah, bring it on. 10 Commandments. I'm good with that. I want to be a good person. But other people say, don't give me that 10 Commandments. I don't want your morality. I don't want your rules. I don't want to have to control my nature, my animal instincts. I don't want that burden of morality upon me. So it says at Sinai, when God gave Torah at Mount Sinai, hatred came into the world because there was a resistance to the Jewish mission. This is the Jewish mission. The Jews were tasked with the Torah to bring it into the world and bring a moral system into the world. And for 3,500 years, we've been hated. Not by everybody, but consistently in every generation. Every Passover, coming up in a little bit more than a month, what do we say in the Passover Haggadah?
Bechol dor vador.
Very good. It says, Bechol dor vador, amad aleinu l'chalotenu. In every generation, somebody comes, stand up to wipe us out. I mean, what other nation can say that? What other people can say that? It doesn't say in every generation someone doesn't like us. No, it's in every generation someone trying to wipe us out. Now, you know, the Pesach story, the Pesach Haggadah, Seder, Pesach. There's a mitzvah. One of the mitzvahs about how you do the Pesach Seder, and you know this from the Manishtana. Manishtana Halayla. What's unique about this night? The reason we say Manishtana is because the night is about teaching children the story of the Jewish people, the mission of the Jewish people. And it has to be done question and answer, question and answer, question and answer. We reward the kids. The kids ask a question, we give them a candy. Keep asking questions, kids. I don't care what your question is. Be independent-minded. Think. Ask questions. You know what's one question that nobody's ever asked? Despite the fact that we're encouraging questions every Pesach Seder. Has anybody heard this question? Hey, mom and dad, what do you mean? Nobody's trying to wipe us out. What do you mean? Who hates us? What are you talking about? You guys are paranoid. You guys are paranoid. In every generation, someone's trying to wipe us out. Get out of here. You're paranoid. That question's never asked. In every generation, someone's trying to wipe us out. Why? Hitler articulated the answer, and Torah articulated the answer. The answer is that the Jewish people have a very important mission to play. We have brought these ideas into the world. We have brought these ideas into the world that have challenged humanity. Now, I'm not saying at all that we are perfect. We are far from perfect. We have not done the most excellent job at our mission. True. Nevertheless, we all know that the Jewish people have transformed civilization. The Judeo-Christian value system is not so much Christian. It's the Jewish value system that the Christians took on and brought it to the world. That's the Judeo-Christian value system. They're Jewish ideas from Mount Sinai. They have transformed civilization that was pagan, that was might makes right, that was the world that Hitler was trying to bring it back to. And so fundamentally, human history is this struggle, as Hitler identified, between the body and the soul of humanity. Is humanity going to rise and become spiritual and good and elevated and spiritual and love each other and have peace on earth? Are we going to rise above our animal instincts and conquer those lesser base desires that want to fight and struggle and conquer? Is humanity going to do that? Or are we going to stay aligned with our animal side, with the body, the physical side, and let it control us? This is the story of human history. This is the story of every human life, whether we're going to become spiritual, rise above our physical desires and instincts and become spiritual. Every human being has this fight inside of him. This is our individual purpose in life. And this is the Jewish people's role in humanity, to be the soul of humanity and bring these ideas into the world. And you know what? Just like your body does not like it when your soul tells it to be better. Just like we have this inner conflict. So also in humanity, there's a push and a pull. And not always has the Jewish ideas been well accepted. And so the pushback against the Jewish people and our message is Jew hatred, is anti-Semitism. And it's not just Hitler's explanation. This is not just explaining Hitler. This is explaining Hamas. This is explaining Iran, which, by the way, comes from Aryan. This explains the obsession of radical Islam. This explains the extremism of the Christian world in the Middle Ages. This explains why in every generation they want to wipe us out. They'd rather see the Jewish people disappear. We're a thorn in the side of humanity, even when we don't do our mission very well, like we're doing today. But the bottom line is that even when we don't do it so well, there's no denying that the Jewish people are a spiritual superpower. And so Hitler identified that the Jewish people are humanity's spiritual superpower. And that's the only, everything else is facade and illusion. It's between Germans and Jews alone. And again, you can go and say, yeah, nut job, paranoid, insane, Jewish people, who are we? We had no power, no army. You're right. Ideologically, spiritually, he identified us correctly as humanity's spiritual superpower. And if he was going to destroy that ideology that the Torah is trying to bring into the world, that the Torah gave to the Jewish people, if that is to be destroyed, the Jewish people must be destroyed. And that's what Hitler and every fanatic anti-Semite from the time of Sinai until today is trying to do, trying to get rid of the Jews and get rid of the moral system. And this explains everything. It explains why the LGBTQ movement is fighting for Hamas and not fighting for liberal democracy. Ultimately, there's some other issues involved underneath the surface. So that's basically the presentation. As I say, I'm touching on these things superficially. The book, I encourage you to get it if you want to explore these ideas in more depth. Available on Amazon. And I'm happy to answer questions because, as I said at the beginning, I'm throwing out some ideas that are probably very different to the ones that you've heard in the past. So I'm opening it up now, Ilana.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, and thank you for being so tachlis and just laying it out there. Why do people hate us? And you make a great point that we've kind of just learned to accept anti-Semitism as this disease. It's the way it is. And, while I've heard a lot of people, a lot of Jewish leaders since October 7th advocating to stand up for ourselves, and I think we've done that to a point, but I really think we need to do more. And as you said, we can't just fight the symptoms. We must rip it out at the root. And in order to do this, we must understand how these roots grew and why. So thank you for speaking to us today about this. I'm going to go ahead and start the questions that I see in the chat. And then once we're done, I think there's a couple, then I'll have everyone unmute and you can go ahead and also ask questions. So let me first go through the chat. So Susan, and you may have answered these sometime along your talk, but some of these questions were asked along the way as well. So Susan is asking, yes, Hitler used us as the scapegoat, but many others preceded him. Why are we the perennial scapegoat?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's the problem. That's what I'm saying is the problem with the scapegoat theory. The scapegoat theory makes sense. You could get away with the scapegoat theory as an explanation for anti-Semitism if it's once or twice. But if it's every single society that we're in, we're the scapegoat, it makes the scapegoat theory look very flimsy. Because really what happens is that in every society, whatever the main value is, the Jews are the opposite. Which is like, how do we become the opposite? So if they're into purity of the race, we're the opposite. If they're into religion, we killed God. And today, human rights is the main value. We're the worst human rights violators of humanity. So somehow we end up as being not just a scapegoat, but the most vile anti-civilizational movement. And that's why you got to go deeper than scapegoat. Scapegoat is a very flimsy answer. Ilana, did we lose Ilana?
Ilana, you're on mute.
That would be a great reason why you couldn't hear me. I've read one of the Gail is saying, I've read one of the earliest anti-Semitic incidents was from the Roman Mithraism followers. stationed on Tiber Island in Rome, who rioted against Jewish soldiers, supposedly because the Romans did not respect the Jewish soldiers' customs. So Hitler wasn't the first. I don't remember where the source was, I guess. Why did they not respect Jewish customs? That's the question. It can't just be differences, as there are many different sects.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's my point. My point here is that in the Jewish people have been hated for so long, and in every generation, it's for a different reason, right? And we can get fooled by those reasons. I call it reasons versus excuses. And the and I'm arguing, this is the core point. I'm arguing that there is a unified field theory here, that there is underneath the 100 different explanations that have been given for why people hate the Jews is one core reason. It's not because we're too rich. It's not because we're too poor. It's not because we're capitalists. It's not because we're communists. It's not because we're too cosmopolitan. It's not because we're not cosmopolitan enough. It's not because we killed Jesus. It's not because we're too religious. It's not because we're not religious enough. It's not because we're not nationalistic enough. It's because we're different, too similar. Every explanation and its opposite. And today it's because we're Zionists, and it's because of the Palestinians, and it's just another excuse. It's just another excuse. Not to say that there's no validity. There's always validity to issues. There is, but deep down, the passion, the obsession, why everyone's rallying against the Jews and the Zionists, but no one cares about the Iranians or the Ukrainians, and they're not. That's not as much a campus movement. It's because there's something else going on deeper. That's the unified field theory. So yes, you're saying yes, it's been going on, and there's always a reason. But what's underneath the surface is that something's bothering them. Usually they can't articulate it. Usually it's ascribed to, yeah, they're too rich, they're too different, they're too similar. They're Zionists. Hitler, the reason I bring Hitler is because he was able to articulate the deeper reason. It's a moral, spiritual issue. Anti-Semitism is a values fight. And Hitler put his finger on it. And the Torah says the same thing, that there's a deeper underlying issue. There's many Torah sources as well. And so now I'll just go to the next, I'll go to the next one, Ilana.
Yes.
So wasn't there hatred before the giving of the Torah? Susan, you are absolutely correct. There was. Because even though it says that Sinai hatred descended, but yes, we know all the way from Torah, Abraham was being fought, and it says, yeah, and Lavan wanted to wipe out the Jewish people, and Egyptians were fighting us tooth and nail. It was before, the Pesach story. This was all before. So we were enslaved for 200 years, right? It's the same thing. It was because from Abraham already there was the value struggle. Abraham was teaching about God. He was thrown by the king Nimrod into a fiery furnace. He was thrown in to be killed. They tried to destroy Judaism from Mr.
Do you
Jew
not
number
see my
one. And so we see that, yes, it's going from the beginning, but it's solidified at the Torah. That's the significance of the Talmudic statement, that it's solidified with the giving of the Torah. There was no going back at that. But yeah, already from Abraham, there was a fight against the Jewish people and the values that we were bringing into the world.
Okay, the
Lana, go
next
ahead.
one is a little long. Let's go to Harry's. Initially, some Jews, including some very wealthy,
Yeah.
supported Hitler as they thought the anti-Semitism was a passing phase. E.O. Wilson from Harvard proposed a branch of biology, sociobiology, where altruism brings on added survival beyond survival of the fittest. Do you agree that those who say that and only they have the answers to a country's problems are the problem? Example, Hitler, Mussolini, It's a long question. But
Yeah,
what do
yeah.
you?
There's a few questions there, but yes, it
Yeah.
is amazing. I saw something recently about it that, yeah, some of Hitler's early supporters were Jews, remarkably. In fact, my next book is being written about Jewish identity and Jewish self-hatred.
Mm, very
It's a
important.
very, yeah, it's a very
Especially today.
common, yeah, it's a very common problem.
Yeah.
And so I would parallel, you might not like the statement, but I would parallel those early Jewish supporters of Hitler with the supporters of Black Lives Matter who who did not realize that there was a completely anti-Semitic agenda attached to Black Lives Matter. I would attribute it the same thing to very much of the pro-Palestinian movement, which Jews, in other words, what Jewish people, we are susceptible. We are human beings. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We don't want to be thought of as different. And yet, for 2,000 years, we've been hated and persecuted. The psychological stress, the
Mm,
multi-generational trauma that every single Jew today carries with them is so deep that it is very easy for us to want to give it up and say, "You're right. I'm not like those people you don't like. I'm pro-Palestinian. Israel's bad.
yeah.
Israel's bad. I'm good." And so when you're a liberal, young, fairly assimilated Jew on college campus, and they're essentially telling you, the liberal world, which is the college campus world, is saying to you, if you want to be part of normal, you could say elite, but it's really more normal society and be accepted in our world and be somebody and not be on the outs and not be hated, then you want to be pro-women, pro-gay, pro-black, etc. Well, you got to be anti-Israel. Part of the package, part of the package, in or out. You can't mix and match these values. Check your Zionism at the door. So the pressure on Jews to give it up in this generation is extreme. What are they being asked to give up? Their association with the Jewish people, which today happens to be their association with Israel. In other generations, is give it up, convert to Christianity. And the pressure was immense. Thus, the Reform movement was born in Germany. Thus, the conversion movement throughout the centuries. And the only way Jews can fight this pressure is through having enough self-knowledge of who we are to be able to have and to be able to understand why we're hated, to understand that we are hated, to understand that behind the obsession with Israel is anti-Semitism, and that's why the double standards. And they have enough knowledge that they can pierce through the blinding insanity that is the world that they look at, the United Nations and the New York Times and their professors and their peers, to be able to say they all have double standards and they're all anti-Israel because something's bothering them about the Jewish people takes a tremendous amount of strength and clarity. And ultimately, the ones who have that clarity can stand up and say, I'm Jewish and you've got a problem. You, the anti-Semite, are an anti-Semite and you've got a problem. Not my problem. Just trying to be a good person walking through this world. And you're obsessed with me and the Jewish people because you got a problem. And if Jews have that level of understanding, Anti-Semitism brushes off of us. It's their problem. And if we don't have that level of clarity, I'm pro-Palestinian. Simple as that. Or I'm going to convert, or I'm going to assimilate, And so that's why Jews end up pro-Hitler and why Jews have ended up on the wrong side of history throughout generations. And in the end, if you stand up for being Jewish and dignity, you're going to be much better off and happier and on the right side of history. Sadly, we have not done the best job educating our next generation about all of this.
Definitely. Sharon Terrace says if Christianity and Islam are based on Judaism hating the moral code and Jews bring to the world that Jews bring to the world, don't they hate themselves and their own religions?
Well, I think there's a big difference between Christianity and Islam. It's a great question that I deal with much more in depth in the book. I'll give you a quick answer though. And again, I like to answer it by telling you not my idea, but Hitler's idea. What did Hitler say about these two things? Hitler said about Christianity, I'm going to destroy them. What did he say about Islam? My partners. Do you get that? He was partners. The Mufti was his honored guest in World War II. SS division of Muslims, partners. And Christianity's enemy. So how do we explain it? Because Hitler understood that Christianity actually is a Judeo value system, and Islam not so much so.
Okay.
I have a question.
Islam not so much so.
I don't know if it's Steve.
We have one more. We have
put yourself on mute. But I'm sorry. But I just wanted. In other words, Hitler understood in Islam is to a large degree a value system of power and domination and conquering, and not really a religion about love and peace and humanitarianism that Christianity was in its fundamental value system. And so I think that that's part one of the question. And the other part is that, yeah, Christian anti-Semitism, many psychologists from Freud and Sartre and many other people that I quote in the book say, yes, it's actually a pushback against their own religion being put upon themselves. It is a fight against their very own Christianity and their very own values. It's kind of a self-hatred. Last question.
I think it's any idea as to what we should do to help us change others' perceptions of us and thus be more acceptable.
I'm glad you asked that question, Susan. My answer is: Did you hear the what's his name State of the Union a week or two ago? He gave a State of the Union address. The guy from the New York Times, the Jewish journalist from the New York Times. Come on, help me out here. Anyways, he said similar ideas to what I've said. I say don't worry about it. I don't say don't worry about it so much. I think it's very important to respond to anti-Semitism by understanding that it's a spiritual phenomena. It's a deep spiritual phenomena, and the best response to it is what so many Israelis, including survivors of October 7th, have responded by saying they want to wipe us out because we're Jewish. Let's be Jewish. To me, that's the best response. They want to wipe us out because we're Jewish. Let's keep Shabbat. They want to extinguish the light that we're bringing into the world. Let's light the light. That's the best response. It's a spiritual war, and it's our mission against the opposite values. Let's continue bringing let's stand up for who we are. Let's be proud of who we are. Let's strengthen ourselves and our children to stand up for who we are. I'm not saying we don't need to also do a better job with PR and all that stuff, but it's good luck. hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on fighting anti-Semitism every year, and anti-Semitism is through the roof. And yeah, Israel's PR is not good, but even if we had the best PR on the planet, we would be still getting decimated in the communications war that's going on, humanity, especially with today with social media, etc. This is not a fair playing field that we are on. And you can have $100 million to conquer, two of these guys' social media messages that have hundreds of millions of followers, and they say a few anti-Semitic comments, and they've got hundreds of millions of followers. You could spend $100 million trying to conquer that, and you probably won't be successful because they believe the singer or the actress or the anti-Semitic politician, right? Yeah. So I don't think it's not Peter Beinart. Peter Beinart is a self-hating Jew. It's Bret Stephens from the New York Times. Bret Stephens did a great speech. You should check out his State of the Jewish People podcast that he gave about a week or two ago. So that's the idea. I think our better use of time and energy and hitting the source of fighting the source of anti-Semitism is to love being Jewish and to appreciate that we, the Jewish people, are members of the most beautiful, incredible people in the world. It's beautiful. We're part of an incredible family with beautiful values that have stood the test of time. We're still here. We're still doing our job. We are a spiritual superpower, and that's why they hate us. They're going to push back. They're going to continue pushing back on us. And I love being Jewish.
Rabbi, your message could be looked at as being very pessimistic in the sense that anti-Semitism is going to be around forever because it's based on really fundamental. You can't argue against anti-Semitism. It's pretty clear. There's always going to be a reason: too rich, too powerful. Yeah. So, but your reasons are really a fundamental reason, which can't be. You can't work it out by discussion. You can't work it out by argument. Is right. That the point you're making? The only way you can live with, you have to live with anti-Semitism in a sense by strengthening yourself, strengthening the Jewish people.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, yes, and. The end is that the Torah tells us the plot line of human history. It's all there. It's been written. We are in the 9th inning of human history as laid out in the Torah, and how everything has been played out just as the Torah has predicted it. And in the end, it's a very happy ending. It's a very happy ending. It's 2,000 years of persecution that's predicted in the Torah, but there's a very happy ending. You know why? Because in the end, humanity does accept these values. And it ends up being peace on earth and love humanity and equal rights. It does end up there. Our mission is successful, just like it's 80% successful already. And so humanity has this push and pull struggle through history. But in the end, guess what? We win. We win. And humanity wins because these values win. And so ultimately, I have a very optimistic view. It's just that I'm saying don't get lost in the push and pull of 2,000 years of persecution. Keep your eye on the big picture. In the end, it's going to work out really nicely. And we want to be part of that great journey that the Jewish people are on.
Alana had to step away. So does anybody else have any questions for the rabbi?
Susan has endless questions.
Well, we can't do endless questions, so I'll take short questions because it's getting late.
Yeah, I can only do a couple more. I got to go too.
So.
Thank you, Pam. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Rabbi. There's something I'm not clear about. You cite that we're hated because we have been a people of light and spiritualism, and we take care of the weak. This is a precept. We have to take care of everybody. But isn't that what the Catholicism took from us as well? I mean, that's their big thing. Not only just turn the other cheek, but of
Christianity.
course. Well, I said Catholicism for a reason, only because of the Catholic meaning universal. It's so intrinsic to their so-called definition. That's the very thing they took from us. And so why aren't they? Of course, Hitler would have gone after them eventually, as he would have the Arabs, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Well, how is that a reason for us to be hated from time immemorial?
Again, the point is, when Christians are really being Christian, they don't hate Jews. When Christians are not really being Christian, then they hate Jews. So you have today a huge movement of the evangelical Christian world which loves Jews.
Right.
And okay, some people say they have ulterior motives, but fine, but they actually love the Jewish people in a deep way, and they believe those who bless, the verse from the Torah, those who bless the Jews will be blessed, those who curse the Jews will be cursed, and they really live with that. There's a gentleman, a non-Jewish gentleman named George Gilder, who wrote one of the best books on anti-Semitism. It's called The Israel Test. I encourage you all to check that out also. This non-Jewish economist, George Gilder, The Israel Test, I have it in my bookshelf over there. He writes that you can test the values of a person by how they respond to the Jews, or a society by how they respond to the Jews, in this case, Israel. So a nation that is open and tolerant and really believes in these values of meritocracy and love and peace, they're not going to have a problem with the Jews. A society that's totalitarianist and not really free and doesn't believe in equal rights, it's no coincidence. Russia, radical Islam, the South American dictatorships, these are the nations that hate Israel. There's no coincidence. And America, when America is at its best, it's our best friend. And when evangelical Christians are Christian, they're our best friend. And when Christians are not, as they were for so much of the Middle Ages, and very often some of them not, then they're not really adhering to Christian values, and they're not in an open society. That's why they called it the Dark Ages, because they weren't living in an open society. If they were living in an open society, they wouldn't have had a problem with the Jews. Ultimately, the world will be an open society and love everybody and be a meritocracy, and then they won't hate us as much. That's when Mashiach comes. That's the messianic view of the world. All right, Pamela, bring it home.
And does anybody else have a short question so that the rabbi can finish up?
I do, Catherine. I was at Hadassah Medical, and as a youngster, studying, one of our jobs was dealing with the immigrants coming in. And the elderly Russians and people from northern countries, some of them wanted to go home because health-wise it was very hard. They had made Aliyah from Russia, but then they got heart conditions and the heat, and they wanted to go back. And we were left, Brodsky, my best friend, and I, we were left having to tell them that it was a one-way ticket to Israel, that the evangelicals paid the return trip to Russia. These were because, and this is my question to the rabbi, because to the evangelicals, they want the Jewish people to come back to Israel. Like the Catholics, they believe that when the Jewish people return to Zion, then the Messiah will come. We're not, and they're not talking about your Messiah, Rabbi. They're talking about their Messiah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it was very hard For
Right. So
us,
my
because
answer to
we were
that,
Okay,
young,
okay.
my,
and
You know,
yeah, I got
you're
it. I
from
got it.
okay.
West,
I
from
got it. I
the
got it.
He's
U.S.
got it. He's
I
So
got it.
my
got it.
question to you is,
I
how do you
got it.
deal with that?
Okay,
A lot of
okay. He's
these
going to
I
answer.
got it.
evangelical people and
He's
other
going to
Christians,
answer.
very nice
Stop.
people, and they were very
Stop.
nice to do this,
Okay,
but they were
stop, because
doing it
he's
for
going to,
their own interests, so that their
okay,
Messiah would come, the
stop,
second
and he's
coming.
going to answer you. So
Do you have an
stop.
answer for
Yes.
that?
It's a yes. Yes. What I say,
Forgot the question.
first of all, there are all kinds of Christians and there's all kinds of motivations, and I cannot plumb the depths of the hearts of every individual Christian. I am sure there are mixed emotions and mixed motivations in the hearts of many of them, and they may be doing it for impure reasons that ultimately the Messiah will be Jesus and he'll come and reveal himself. It's very possible that that's motivating a lot of them. It doesn't bother me too much because I say to them, listen, and I'll tell you, I say, listen, when he comes, when the Messiah comes, we're going to ask him one question. Is this your first time here or your second?
That's what Teddy Kollek said.
And I say that joke to Jewish audiences that because almost every time they ask me this question, and every Jewish audience laughs. I said it recently to a Christian audience, and I got straight faces. And I said, I said, that was a joke, people. That was a joke. And they were like, oh, it was a joke. So it's funny. It's something very sensitive, I guess. But the bottom line is, we'll take our friends, Jewish people. We are not blessed with a lot of friends. And today, especially in America, the pro-Israel support is coming much more from the evangelical Christians than the Jewish community, because there are so many more tens of millions of evangelical Christians who are pro-Israel than there are pro-Israel Jews, because the Jews not only are so much smaller in number, but we are divided, and many of them are pro-Palestinian and pro-this and the George Soros and et cetera, et cetera. And so if we are going to rely on American support to come because of the Jewish influence, as Trump said recently, we don't have that kind of power anymore. So let's take who our friends are, even though they might have some mixed emotions, and let's embrace them as much as possible, because they are our support today, and they're the best we got.
Okay, I think that's a
Thank
good
you
way
very
to
much,
end.
everybody. Thanks
Thank
for
you very, very
participating.
much. And Ilana put your book information in the chat. So those of you
Great.
who see it there, you can copy it and
Yeah,
buy
you can
the
just go
book.
to Amazon and do search for Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew. I
Right.
appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Thank you very,
I hope
very
it was
much.
helpful.
Thank
Okay,
you.
have a
Thank you
great
so
day.
much. Could have gone on for hours, but
Yeah, thank you.
good.
Bye, Barry and
Thank you,
Carol.
Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For
Okay,
everybody
good night.
else,
Good night.
this ran so late, so there's not going to be much of a schmooze. Alana had to step away for a while. Does anybody
I'm
have
going.
any?
Bye-bye. Good to see
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about any of the VFI programs or anything specific like that?